sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
Welcome to Rabbi on the Sidelines. This is Rabbi Sherman from Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. This week we are joined by Ben Kaplan, the author of this amazing new book, Pipeline to the Pros, How D3 Small College Nobodies Rose to Rule the NBA. We're going to talk about your book, Ben, but also about a really fascinating story that actually brought the two of us together. So it's great to have you from Chicago. How you doing, Ben?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Rabbi.
Thank you. So you do not play in the NBA. You do not work in the NBA, but you wrote a book about the NBA, which, by the way, awesome on the front cover by Woj. You love basketball. You'll devour Pipeline to the Pros. And really, during this NBA Finals, it made me look at who's on the sidelines in a very different way. So how did you decide to look at Division III basketball and see how it impacted the NBA today?
Yeah, it all started with I played Division III basketball. So I went to Amherst College in Massachusetts, and I played 2 years there, my junior and senior year, actually. And after college, and, you're going to like 5-year college reunions and catching up with people and then just watching the game, I started noticing people I played with, people that coached me, people I played against. All of a sudden, they're not only working in the NBA, which was a bit of a surprise, but they're rising the ranks really quickly. And so it kind of begged the question, how widespread is this? How many of these Division III former athletes are actually working in the league and rising to these like top ranks, like head coach or general manager? So during COVID, had a little bit more time on my hands, as most people did, and started looking into it. And at the time, 12 out of the 30 NBA teams had a head coach or general manager that had played Division III basketball. So nearly half of the NBA teams were entrusting one of their top 2 leadership roles to someone like me. So that just led us down this rabbit hole of like, why did this happen? How did this happen? When did it start? When did it really pick up? And took us back to the very beginning of the league and led to this really interesting project.
That's a lot of research to do just since COVID, what's in this book. How do you do it? Was it online? Was it through the NBA offices? Was it through relationships? How do you find these facts?
The
basketball cards, maybe?
Not basketball cards. A lot of it was just starting. Where we started was, okay, who were the head coaches and general managers throughout the history of the NBA? So we started with Basketball Reference, looking at all the people that we had listed for every season, and then trying to figure out what their backgrounds were. So where did they go to college? Did they play a sport in college? Sometimes that was easy to find out. Sometimes that was really challenging to find out, especially as we got further, when we went further back in the history of the league. And then once we found the people that we were interested in, meaning they played basketball at a Division III college or before Division III started, something that became a Division III college, it was trying to figure out how they got to the NBA. And so really digging through their past and going through newspaper archives, anything we could find in like the Sports Illustrated vault, anything online that we could possibly find, YouTube, and like looking through anything to see how they got there. And then that helped us kind of understand the rough sketch of each of these unique journeys. And then from there, it was like reading more about basketball throughout all the different eras to figure out like what was coaching, what was management, what was going on with the league as a whole. And then also figuring out who we needed to talk to. And that's where having Danny, my co-author, Danny Parkins, who's a radio host in Chicago, who has more media connections. I am not in the industry at all. Helped, get us interviews with people like Brad Stevens, Hubie Brown, Daryl Morey, the Van Gundys, and Jeff Van Gundy ended up writing the foreword to the book. Yep. So that's where we started. And then, the way these things happen, kind of like why I'm here, you talk to one person, one conversation leads to another conversation, leads to another.
Yeah, I have a list of people that I would love to chat with you about. We don't have time to chat with all of them, but Van Gundy, Popovich. Let's talk about Popovich. Just a Hall of Famer. And then I just was finishing the book a couple of days ago and talking about who's at the Hall of Fame induction. There's all these D3 guys. What was the key to his success? Is it luck? Is it skill? Is it a bit of both? Because I know there's probably a lot of D3 guys like you that are not general managers that probably could also be. What is that streak of luck that people need?
Yeah. This is one thing that we really did not want to shy away from in the book, was just how much luck and like happenstance play into the success of these people that reach the very top of their profession. Like, this is such a competitive industry, and there are only 30 NBA head coaching jobs, and it's much easier to figure out who the 30 best basketball players in the world are than it is to figure out who the 30 best head coaches in the world are. It's just
Can you do that with the rabbis too?
I don't know. Are there rabbi analytics out there? Like,
There are definitely, but also when you talk about luck in relationships, it's sort of the same. There's a limited amount in any industry. There's a limited amount of spots for the people that want to do what they do at the best level.
Yeah, absolutely. And so not only do you need to be qualified, that's like table stakes. So all the people in this book worked very hard, had unique skills that allowed them to be good in the jobs that they had once they got them. But it also required meeting the right person, or meeting the right people, or meeting the right series of people. Like, one of the chapters, we talk about John Hammond and his career. I mean, it's amazing that, like, he was about to sink out of the NBA, and there was just life raft after life raft after life raft thrown at him because he had such great connections with people. He was just a good people person. So I think what we were looking for is, like, you need to work hard and build up the right skills, but in that hard work, meet the right people and ensure that you're, building out your network in a way that's going to make it so that you can succeed when you get the chance.
And I also think relationships are not luck. You have to, if you know that you have to meet the people, then how do you do that? Now, some people obviously can send an email, other people can meet, etc. But I know the 5-star basketball camp took a big place in this. And I believe, was it Frank Vogel? Or let's talk about the Frank Vogel Rick Pitino story, right? Like, begged his way, leaves a D3 college to say, I will do anything I can just to get in there. That's a little about what you learned about Frank Vogel. Obviously won the championship with the Lakers during COVID. Back to the Pitino piece, and why would Pitino take a chance on a guy like that?
Yeah, with Frank Vogel, so he was playing at a school in Pennsylvania called Juniata College, and some of the people we interviewed, they're playing at a school. So we juxtaposed his story with Brad Stevens, who was playing at DePaul. And Brad Stevens,
not DePaul
with the W, DePaul. Yeah, being in Chicago, you always have to hit the W very hard to make sure that people understand. And that was a program with a full-time head coach, and the program did well. They had an investment. They had good alumni support. Juniata, a little bit different. Their head coach was not even full-time. He was a high school teacher who would shuttle over. So Vogel loved basketball. He was thinking about other careers. He decided not to pursue medicine, mostly because he wasn't as good at it as he thought he might be. And he was like, okay, I need to pursue basketball, but the commitment I'm seeing at the Division III level isn't what I want. He was someone who just really had a strong capacity towards setting goals and working towards those goals. So he says, okay, who's the best college basketball coach to learn from in the country right now is Rick Pitino at Kentucky. How can I get in touch with him? Well, I know he's at the 5-star camp every once in a while. I went there as a camper. I'm going to write a really nice letter to the people there telling them how much 5-star meant to me and how I want to give back, just for the off chance that I'll be able to catch Pitino for a few minutes and beg my way into the Kentucky program.
And he did it.
He did it. I mean, it took a lot of no's, way more no's than I would have been able to take for sure. But he was incredibly persistent, and not just persistent, but understand exactly what he wanted, which at that age is impressive to be able to do that at 20 years old. Say, I'm going to throw my college friends away. I'm going to throw this life away that I have at Juniata, which is comfortable. Go somewhere completely foreign. I've never really left this like Jersey, Philadelphia area before. All in the name of pursuing a dream.
I want to talk about two more people before we get to the more personal connection about you, basketball, and your dad, and just how the faith piece really goes into this as well. Let us talk about Leon Rose, actually, as an agent who D3, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Cherry Hill East, and he obviously had he had commitment on the court. But then you talk about the player empowerment area, but it's not really player empowerment. It's about what happens behind the scenes in CAA. So how does a guy like an agent who played basketball in D3 actually change the way that the game is played today?
Yeah, he rose up as an agent at the right time for someone who might be interested in taking a position with the teams, because with LeBron James, and then you got like people like Kevin Garnett and other superstar basketball players that were finding that they were able to set the terms of their career. They're not going to play in one city the entire time. They're going to go to different teams. They're going to get the guys that they want there. And who was orchestrating all that and making sure that everybody's contracts were up at the right time, and talking to the general managers to make sure that everybody was prepared to clean their cap sheet and have enough room to sign people. It was the agents behind the scene. And some big market teams, the Knicks especially, saw the success that the Lakers were having with an agent as their general manager, that the Warriors were having with a former agent as their general manager, and realizing that, if we want to get in the business of recruiting superstars, we need to get someone who worked really closely with those superstars and understand how they tick and what drives them. And so they hired Leon Rose, who was, played Division III basketball, liked playing in a lot of men's leagues all over the Philadelphia, New Jersey areas, and was a big-time JCC superstar. Saw a lot of newspaper clippings about him dropping, 20 or 30 points in the JCC leagues out there. And then, through connections that he had at various schools, became this super powerful player agent. And so the Knicks hired him, and he's built them into a really successful team.
Here's something to add to the Leon Rose story. My sister is also a rabbi in Cherry Hill, and his parents go to the synagogue that my sister works at. So, little footnote in that chapter about Leon Rose. About the D3 piece, not and more in general, not the specifics. You talk about how even though they might have the talent on the court, at the D3 level, they had the ability to do everything: recruiting, video coordinating, the laundry, coaching. How does that then lead to the success? Meaning, I don't, nothing's below me in terms of what I need to do to get to that high level.
Yeah, working in the NBA, if you're going to start your career, you're not going to be, unless you're, someone like JJ Redick who might get a head coaching job.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about him.
Yeah, would be happy to talk more about him because I've been thinking a lot about that lately. You're usually not starting at the top. You're usually starting at the bottom, and now there are a lot of different rungs of layers of interns and different assistant coaches and things like that. So switch back to. Can you hear me? Power back on. I'm good on this.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, we're gonna go from here.
Okay.
Yes, D3 and getting to that level.
Yes. So where was I? With the jobs,
how they are able to get to the level without basically ever playing.
Yeah, the jobs to get into the NBA is very unglamorous. So you're going to be doing things like driving people around, picking up people from the airport. There's stories about like Mike Budenholzer using free subway coupons that were in the Spurs office to feed himself and doing laundry in the facilities. And like Sam Presti was sleeping on training tables there. You're not going to be out on the court with players. You're not going to be, voicing your opinion and, saying this is what our strategy should be. You're not going to be getting a ton of free gear. Like you're going to have to doing a lot of things that are not that fun, with some, taking the intrinsic benefit of like, I love basketball and I'm just happy to be part of this. And when you play at the Division III level, no kids grow up dreaming of playing Division III basketball. Like you've already been humbled a little bit. You've been told that like, hey, whatever your dreams were, you're going to have to take them down a notch. But at the same time, obviously had some success in the game. And so the other thing that's unique about Division III is nobody's checking in on you to make sure you're going to class. Nobody's working you out in the fall or the spring. Like everything is very much on your own. So you have demonstrated some ability to have a little bit of humility to choose basketball when it's not the most convenient thing, because you're not getting an athletic scholarship. You're not generally playing in front of a ton of people. And the last point is like, you're able to work when nobody is making it easy for you. You're able to figure out how to structure work and structure your time so that you can fit everything in.
Two last people before the bar mitzvah. Tom Thibodeau and JJ Redick. Tom Thibodeau, as you talk, Leon Rose hires this guy, D3, takes the Knicks to the playoffs now, pretty far into the playoffs. What's his success? Everywhere he goes, he has success in rebuilding and getting there. Is it the D3 Magic or is it Tom Thibodeau?
I think that one is Tom Thibodeau. It's just everyone you
Ooh,
talk to talks about the motor that he has and just how hard he can work. Even someone like we talked with Steve Clifford, who's been an NBA head coach at several stops, most recently with the Charlotte Hornets, and he was like, I would work crazy hours, but nobody had a motor like Thibodeau. Like I would have to say, hey, I got to go home, I got to stop, I got to eat, but Tibbs could just keep going. And so having that level of preparation has always allowed him to like make sure that his teams are better prepped than any other teams, and it's paid off. They've always outperformed in the regular season, at least.
Is there somebody that we don't know about right now that we're going to see in the NBA maybe in the next couple of years based on your research?
We did, in our book, we did talk about a couple young alums, both from the same school, from Wesleyan University in Connecticut. One was Greg St. Jean, whose dad, Gary, was an NBA head coach and an NBA general manager. And Greg...
But he already has that upper hand because of that relationship that you talk about in the book too.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, so he was very forthcoming with us about like, hey, my last name, this is something that helps get me in the door. So he has not only acknowledged that, but he's also used that to help other people. So there was an alum at his school a couple of years behind him named Jordan Sears, who was thinking like, I want to get into business. But then as the basketball season's winding down his senior year, he's like, I'm loving digging into the film. I think I want to do this more permanently. And so, Greg helped set him up with a job at St. John's where he was working, and then helped provide some introductions. And Jordan's had a lot of success in the NBA. He's the Dallas Mavericks G League coach right now. So I think that's someone who we could definitely see as a rising star.
And so JJ Redick, with no NBA experience, has the desk experience, but has Duke. How to fit into the plan?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with him. Like it's such a challenge to figure out, how to be a coach. One thing that Will Hardy, who's the head coach of Utah Jazz, said to us is like, coaching is a profession. It's not something that you can just do innately. It's very different from being a player. So you have to learn the profession. And that's something that while JJ doesn't have on the job training, I think through his podcast and what he's been doing and the conversations he's been having with like coaches in the off season, he's definitely been preparing for this. Recently listened to a podcast he recorded before the season with Chris Finch, the head coach of the Timberwolves, and another former D3 guy. And if you look at it through the lens of like JJ's thinking about coaching, the questions that he was asking were very much like the right questions that someone who's thinking about entering a job might ask.
And Kaplan, author of Pipeline to the Pros, but we're going to talk about your personal life because that's how I got to know who you were, and actually a tweet just last week by Ernie Johnson, a common friend and acquaintance. Your bar mitzvah. Take us to that point and how your bar mitzvah ended up being related to basketball.
Yeah. My dad knew I loved basketball and I loved sports. So as something to do during the party that would be special, he started calling some local Chicago sportscasters and seeing if they would leave a message on his voicemail just wishing me congratulations. So he started doing that and started getting some messages back and started having a fair amount of success. And so then he was like, okay, let's see if I can talk to someone a little bit bigger and see if they'll say yes. And so he called Turner Studios and left a message and explained what he was wanting. And he got a call back directly from Ernie Johnson a couple days later. And I think the message Ernie shared was something like, yeah, we're just sitting around during the playoffs. Like we'll pull something together. And so I think he was expecting, I don't know, a tape or a message or something. And then a couple of weeks later at his office, he gets a VHS, and on the cover it says the Ben Kaplan halftime report. So naturally he dropped everything and immediately ran home to pop that in the VCR and see what it was. And it was a halftime report about me leaving, I guess, junior high at the time and going right to the NBA. And it was with Ernie Johnson and George Karl, who was the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks at the time, and Kenny Smith, who's on the show now, and Peter Vesey, who was their kind of like guy who stirred things up. So Peter Vesey definitely had a lot of fun comments that my friends enjoyed very much about me being a ball hog and having a rap sheet and needing random drug testing and things like that. But it was definitely a huge surprise for me to see that when I was expecting a typical photo montage during the bar mitzvah party, instead having this halftime report.
And pretty ironic that we're talking about that when Inside the NBA is perhaps finishing right now, which is no political commentary necessary, but the best show in basketball. And we hope that everybody makes the right decision, but we're going to leave it there. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my 501c3 status as a rabbi at a synagogue. But I found out about this story just last year when somebody who was at your bar mitzvah, Meredith Shiner, reached out to me. I reached out to her of her podcast on Tablet Magazine. On Orthodox, which is called The Franchise Juice and Sports. And she said, do you know anything about bar mitzvahs and basketball? And then she said there was this Ben Kaplan kid, blah, blah, blah. And then Ernie Johnson. I said, oh my gosh, I had just interviewed Ernie Johnson, texted him. He said, Ben Kaplan, oh my gosh. Because tell us the postscript of that story 30 years later.
Yeah, so when it was a little over 2 decades later, and 2021, my dad was sick. He was diagnosed with cancer, and it was pretty advanced at the time, and he was not doing well. So he was diagnosed in the fall, and then in the winter, wanted to get him some gifts for the holidays. And generally what I do for family members is buy them books. So I bought him some books that I thought he would enjoy, and he just kind of looked at them. And I realized between the pain that he's dealing with and like the fog from chemo, he's not going to be able to read these. So I got him something that he would very much like to enjoy, but it's just a reminder of the condition that he's in. So I felt pretty bad about that. Not that he was making me feel bad, but it's like, I need to get him something really special for the next occasion. So I thought back to what was the best gift he ever got me. And I thought about that halftime report. And so I found an email for Ernie Johnson's publicist and sent him a note, very similar to what my dad did for me 20-something years earlier, and got a note back from Ernie. He asked some questions about my dad, and then he sent an incredibly kind video just from his backyard after spending some time with his grandkids and talking about his own cancer journey and sharing some words of advice and just being kind and inspiring the way Ernie always is.
Can you hear me?
I got you now.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries.
So you do this video, and tell me why Ernie would do that. Why would he come back 30 years later and do that again?
Well, I guess the answer to that other question is why would he do the video in the first sentence? All right. Can you hear me? Good.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't hear him though. Give me 1 second.
Yep.
Say hello.
Hello?
No.
No.
Here.
Shut this off.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, everybody, for technical difficulties. We'll be right there with Ben Kaplan. It's worth the wait, I promise. Just make sure our audio is working here. Can you hear me now, Ben?
Yep.
You can hear me, but I can't hear you. Is your audio okay? Okay, that's good. Talk again?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So Ernie Johnson, why would he do this 30 years later?
So, I think the question is why would he have done it in the first place? And the answer didn't really change. He's just the type of person that's going to use his position to create meaningful memories and meaningful experiences for people. So I also think the cancer piece, hit home for him because he had experienced that in his own life. And the other thing that we touched on in the interview we did with Meredith was just about how his relationship with his father and how much that father-son relationship resonates with him.
he actually said that, yes, it's called a God wink. I don't know if you've heard Ernie say that, but what is a God wink, and how was that situation a God wink?
He was saying, things that someone who might not be a person of faith might say, oh, what a ridiculous coincidence. Or, he's saying, hey, somebody's telling me something. And this is a moment that I need to understand that, God's winking at me and God's telling me, hey, this is something that I need to act on or pay attention to. And there's a reason all this is coming back together. So I think the thing, maybe Ernie's not being totally sincere, but I'm sure he is based on the person he is. But it was remarkable to me to see how much this thing that meant so much to my family meant to him, because he was able to mean so much to us and how this created this cycle. So that made it really special. You're muted.
Tell us about that tweet just last week that you connected once again.
So with the news that the TNT halftime show might be going away because TNT is not going to be having the NBA potentially losing that deal. And I had also just happened to be at my mom's house and found the tape of the halftime report, like the actual hard copy. I think we had seen it before. That was like on the bar mitzvah tape. So it was like a tape of a tape, but this one was like the actual VHS. And those two things coming together, I was like, okay, I really want to tell this story. And originally I had just planned on sharing the part about the halftime report and how nice it was that Ernie did that and showing the video because it's kind of funny. But as I was writing it down, I was realizing like, I want to tell the next part too, and how, it all came full circle and how Ernie did this for my dad. And it became this really meaningful thing between us. And then not only that, but, Meredith comes in and meets Ernie through you. And then it becomes even more full circle. And we have this conversation and we're able to talk about it together. So I think all of that, I didn't really realize how crazy it is and how special it is until I was able to like jot it down.
And what's the next part?
The next part is that it goes super viral on Twitter. And, I think it was like somewhere near 7 million views. And the response to it was beyond anything I could have imagined. And 99.999% very positive, and people sharing, their own memories about something Ernie did, like you had done with me, or sharing their memories about like when they were able to do something special. Like I got a message from the drummer for the band Guster, and he was like, I just lost my dad a few days ago. This means so much to hear this, and we'd like to do this for our band, for our fans, and this just reinforces why we like to do that stuff. And I'm not in the habit of crafting viral tweets. That's definitely not my thing. So I made sure to go through and like read every comment and every, retweet and quote tweet where people were sharing their own stuff about like the things that they bonded with their dad about. And it was a really cool, like couple weeks to be able to go through all that.
And so what would you say the intersection is between sports and faith?
I think that's a great question. I mean, I think for people like me who sports are like just a ridiculous part of their life, and like all of my best friends are through sports and my favorite memories are through sports, and the way that I bond with my kids and my dad and the conversations we have are through sports. And same thing with faith. It just is something that is like so ingrained in your life and becomes like the fabric through which all of your relationships and all of your good times, that's just always there for you. So that's what it meant for me.
And what would you say the faith aspect of the D3 piece is? How much faith was there in these people trying to get to the NBA?
There had to be a ton. And part of it was, I think there's almost something like biblical about some of these stories, and that like they weren't trying to be NBA coaches or NBA general managers. They liked the work and they found value in the work and they found beauty in the work. So they were working, and in working hard, they created these opportunities and they created positions for themselves and futures for themselves that they would have never envisioned.
And so what's your advice to the kid in buddy basketball right now that wants to get to the NBA?
Well, the one thing that I think stood out is that nobody was ever planning for it. So I think the best thing that you can do is not think about, okay, in 2 years I'll do this, and in 2 years I'll do that, and in 3 years I'll get to this spot, and then I'll get to the NBA. But really just saying, okay, I'm in buddy basketball. I want to make the most of it. I want to get better. I want to have fun with my friends, and I want to win if I can win. And then just maximizing your talent, setting goals and trying to reach those goals, and just keeping going, whether it's, in front of tens of thousands of people in an arena, or whether it's in front of tens of people at a small college gym. Like, it still is meaningful, and not just the games, but the relationships. That's really the thing that sticks out from all these different stories.
I have an idea that maybe one of these days we get me, you, Ernie, and Meredith on the podcast together to actually see how we all come together. But what's your message to Ernie and message to Meredith today as we conclude?
That would be fantastic. My message to Ernie would be just a message of deep gratitude for great memories from the past 20-something years, the ability to share this story and get even more, warm, fuzzy feelings from hearing from all these different people. And a thank you for kind of being a representation of the relationship I had with my dad, and that, how special that was, especially through our love of basketball. I should say through my love of basketball, but then he hopped on because he loved whatever I was into. And then to Meredith, it was just an incredible moment to have that conversation, to make that connection, to see how much it actually meant to Ernie, and not just, something where he's recording a video and then popping off and being done and not thinking about it again, that this was something that actually stuck with him. And then I think the last thing is, like, having that podcast, I was able to say things to her and through that podcast that I wasn't necessarily sharing with my parents, and for them to be able to listen to it. And it was actually, shortly thereafter my dad died. So for him to be able to hear that, it became a really special memory and memento for us.
I'll know that for us to be able to hear that, it was not just a memento, but an inspiration that continues to carry us from day to day, not just during the NBA season. When the cameras turn off, we know what's in our hearts and souls. We are so honored that Ben Kaplan, author of Pipeline to the Pros, good friend of Rabbi on the Sidelines, joins us on this episode. Ben, so nice to meet you, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.